All right, so if you guys not familiar, we do go live every Tuesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's a little off schedule for me today. But having said that, we are going to be going live. And I want to discuss a little bit about the riot in Delaware. So we'll get some audience that feeds in eventually. Again, we're going live from the Tier Talk Facebook page. And once the show is done, we keep it posted on top of the page. So this is just going to be just a regular dialogue where we discuss basically what needs to be done after the riots. Because right now, unfortunately, if you guys are reading the articles that I'm posting on my wall, well, the articles I'm posting is the families of the inmates. They're concerned about how long this lockdown is going to be. You know, they're concerned about how long the investigation is going to be. And now I'm sure there's going to be some, I want to say some political push. And that's my opinion. But first, you know, if you're not familiar with what happened, which I doubt you are, I mean, this made national news. So if you're in the field, you definitely know what happened. But James C. Vaughn Correctional Facility, we had a riot, right? 4 people were taken hostage, and we lost a brave warrior by the name of Lieutenant Stephen Floyd. And it's great because actually we were able to raise, let me tell you something, guys. Thin Blue Line, they've been kind of partnering up with me. And they put bracelets. You see the gray? Gray kind of stands for corrections. Blue's obviously for police. And they put a thing to sell bracelets on my profile page. And we were able to raise a real good amount. Okay, so we're in the process of giving the check to the family. And we're going to figure out how we're going to do that. But we're going to probably be filming it. We're working on it right now. It's just a matter of how we're going to go ahead and give that check to the family. But it showed a lot of love because I'm going to tell you something, guys. We put it on my page, and corrections represented like you wouldn't believe. Thin Blue Line was amazed by how much love we gave to Lieutenant Floyd and his family. Just amazing. So again, thank you, guys. We wouldn't be able to do it if it wasn't just for the love we get from my profile page. So that was pretty good. That was awesome. So, okay, so got to make this an interactive conversation. The reason why I'm doing a show today is because I'm having trouble with the show I did on Tuesday, recording it for the radio. And this is, I need to get this recorded because this is how I make my money, because I got to put the sponsors in. So we're going to kind of discuss a little bit about what needs to be done after a riot has occurred. So we had a great conversation. If you guys didn't listen to the show that just passed on Tuesday, I had a guy named Christopher Stevens, and he does tactical operations. And, oh, thank you, Joe. Joe, you're a big part of helping me out. We had a nice talk yesterday, Joe, so thank you for what you did, connecting me to your union. Joe's from Delaware, by the way. Okay, so the show discussed pretty much the, when you have a riot or when you have a hostage situation, what needs to be done. And I'm not an expert in that. So I'm not going to discuss that. Even though I have some ideas, I'm not the expert on that. I also haven't lived through a riot. So I don't want to discuss that. I feel uncomfortable unless I have an expert I can feed off of on that. But what I would like to discuss is what needs to be done after a riot. And I think that's more of a psychological factor to maintain control and let the inmates know who runs the house. And that's very key, because right now, I'm going to tell you something, guys. We all know right now that you're going to get a lot of pushback from the public. And I posted a couple of articles on my Tier Talk page. I don't know if you guys have been following, but if you look at the articles, you're starting to see now that the families of the inmates are starting to become antsy. And they're starting to put the push to let's lift this lockdown. You know, even though that this is an investigation into a murder, now they're going to start pushing because they can't talk to their loved ones. The loved ones are making complaints, whatever the case may be. But the most important thing is that this incident, obviously because of the murder, it has to get investigated. We have to find out everybody that was involved. That's why the prison's an automatic lockdown. And this isn't an investigation that is going to be quick. It's not. It's going to take its time, because you got to make sure that everything is covered. You're looking at 120 inmates that got to get interviewed. You know, the staff that was involved got to get interviewed. You have to exhaust every angle to make sure that all T's are crossed, all I's are dotted. So the aftermath of the riot is going to be a lot of work. And I'm sure everybody would agree with that, right? And we want to make sure it's done correctly, because we want to make sure that the people that should be, that the people that did this horrible act are held responsible for that act. And you can't rush this, because if you rush it, you miss something, or you mess up, or whatever it is. And then what's going to happen here is the people that are responsible won't be held responsible. So that this has to be time managed. It has to take its time. You got to let the investigation play out. Now, for those in appointed positions, in the higher positions, you know, looking for that vote for tomorrow, and it makes you kind of think, oh, if the public's pushing on to get this done, let me do it, because I'll never secure a vote for whatever I'm planning in the future. It's not about tomorrow. It's about right now, what needs to be done. Your number one focus is bringing that facility back under control. That's your number one focus. And the only way you're going to be able to do that is by making sure that you exhaust every road and you eliminate whatever threat existed. Okay, that's key. Okay, so the first thing is when inmates, and this is again my opinion, but please feel free to, you know, tune in. This is hard in corrections, right? Because when the inmates take control of a facility, it may open the window for other inmates to think, hey, they took control, we could do it. You know, so you got to be worried about what happens after the fact. So automatically the custody aspect, guess what, guys? Psychologically, and it's exactly what Delaware is doing, even though they've had a few assaults, unfortunately, since the lockdown, but you lock it down. You remind the inmates, this is our house, and we run it. You know, you may have had control briefly, but ultimately, it's our house. And I like what Jim Hall says, safety and security first and foremost. Visitation, those other privileges, he's 100% correct. It's not a priority right now. The priority is making sure that you maintain control of that house. So the automatic reaction is to lock it down. And the reason why we lock it down is so we can neutralize. Start everything from scratch. Neutralize, keep everything down at a 0 level so we can free ourselves enough so we can do what needs to be done. Get the manpower where it needs to be, you know, and also identify where the threats are. You see, the same people that push from the public to lift the lockdown are going to be the same people that are going to what? If an inmate gets hurt or killed. What's going on? You guys aren't protecting the inmates. You guys aren't doing what you're supposed to do. So the public's always going to go wishy-washy, and we know that. So, again, do what's right. What's right is safety and security. Keep the prison locked down. Keep the prison secure. You know, I see the comments coming here are good. Start with room checks. You know, I agree. Like, we know for a fact in this unit, the Charlie unit, the inmates were able to organize. You know, the biggest threat in corrections, especially for an officer that works the front line, I'm sure you guys would agree with me, is when inmates unite, and now when they unite and feel their cause is justified. We talked about that, right? So here's the scary thing right now, guys. You know, it was a little scary when we had the 45th anniversary of Attica, right? Attica was in 1971. We had the anniversary recently in September of 2016, and there was rumors going around, right, that we had to worry about a potential uprising for mass incarceration, slave labor, whatnot, right? So we started worrying because we were worrying that inmates would unite on this common cause because there was push from the outside, pushing the inmates on the inside. The people from the outside, you know, you're making it very dangerous for those people working the job on the inside, because here's what you're doing, guys. You're making it harder for the people on the inside to maintain control because you're feeding the inmates, okay, a cause that they now believe is justified, but you're also uniting them on a common cause. And you got to realize something. The protests that go out in the street, I'm not messing with your First Amendment, but we know where those protests wind up going. It's sad that it happens, but it does. Now imagine when you deal with a population that's in a prison because they're known to have less control of who they are. They're known to be impulsive. You know what I mean? For the most part. That's why they're out. That's why they're in our prison and out of the public's eye, is because we're there to maintain control. So now if you start on the outside, uniting them on the inside, and then giving them a cause that they justify, plus showing support. I'm going to get to what Danny Greenwald just said because it's true. Then you start showing support to that. You're motivating those inmates. They got 4 hostages. 4. And you're motivating them. That's not a protest when you have 4 hostages. You're motivating, hostage takers, and then obviously they murdered a hero. So look what you're motivating. So the thing is, there's a push coming from the public, and what Danny said, and Danny's 100% correct. Did you guys, when it went live, did you guys read the comments from the public? Sickening. I mean, if you read the comments from the public, it wasn't even just the fact that they supported the inmates. It was what they were telling the inmates to do to the officers. To the officers. You know, and if I was running a news station, which would never happen, obviously, but if I was, and I started seeing that their support being thrown in the other direction, they should have cut feeds. Because those inmates, I'm sure they read everything. I'm sure they could see the social comments. You know, it is what it is. You know, I mean, I wish that when stuff like this happens, we can kind of 86 all communication, you know, do whatever you got to do to block the tower so there can't be any feed inside the prisons. But unfortunately, it's not like that. So they're watching what's going on, but they're seeing what the public's saying, and they're being reinforced. And it's putting the officers at risk. So the public, if I just may, you know, you want to hold, the inmates responsible for what they've done, and yes, I do. I'm not going to minimize or negate that. But I also got to hold the people responsible on the outside who's pushing the inmates forward with whatever message they think that the inmates need to get across. Because you're uniting the inmates and you're justifying their cause, which means that they're going to take whatever need they got to take to get their word out there. And that's what led to where we're at during that day. Okay, that was scary to me, because I'm reading the comments and I'm actually putting on the comments. If you guys could see the, go back and take a look at the live feeds. I'm putting on the comments, you guys got to stop. You're motivating the inmates. You guys got, and the feedback that I got was bad. But it reminded me, and it's sad, of how people view us. And it's sad, and I gotta say that perspective is an uninformed perspective. It really is. They don't know what we do. You know what I mean? And right now, the problem is that the inmates are carrying a greater voice over us. I want you to know that, guys. They're putting videos on social media that get 1 million views because they're getting the support. You know, and we got to start collectively doing the same thing. Unfortunately, we should be further than we are with that. Unfortunately. But we're not, and that's for another conversation. Yeah, I agree. Lawrence says some inmates don't want have anything to do with an uprising, and so by locking everyone down, you neutralize them and give them an out. Yeah, you know what? The reason we'll go back to that. Hold on, Lawrence. But obviously, Lawrence makes a great point. But I want to go back to that because I want to finish my other thought here. So when this riot occurred, I was upset from what I was hearing from the public. Okay, I was, and we just mentioned that, right? But there's something scary about that too. And hold on, I got my daughter's Barbie car going off. Hold on, there it goes. It's back. All right, sorry about that. There's something scary about that. Okay, there's something scary about that, because when people are uninformed, what they're pushing to the public, what they're pushing to the inmates behind the wall, it's not a quiet protest. It's violent. It's get those guards. Get those dirty officers. You know, show them what it's like for once to be treated like we're treated, like animals. Like you really know what's going on. It's not what's going on. But the problem is that the extremes, because we're not a perfect system, and we know that, but the extremes, a bad story gets magnified and generalized across the way that makes it look like every facility does that. And that's not the case. So what we need to do, and I always say this, if there's a story that goes out there that's extreme and really doesn't represent who we are, we have to quickly create that balance, because we work in the shadows. So people don't know what we do. So if we don't create the balance, then the public is left believing that that one extreme is the norm. So we have to contest that. Okay? If you're in a union position or whatever it is, you got to contest it. And if someone does something foolish, and we know they did something foolish, like one of us, and we know they did something foolish, we got to pull ourselves away from that individual if we know they've done something foolish. Okay? Because we have to remind people that that person, that's not the profession, that's not who we are, that's not what we're about. Because the problem is people are going to take that negative and that becomes who we are. They generalize it out. And that's what gets seen in the public's eye. You know, I mean, how many positive interactions do we get with inmates? Because we have them. But it doesn't, for police on the streets, how many positive interactions do they have with their public? A lot. But that's not what people see. It's not what they put out there. They put out the negative because that's where the ratings are. So we need to contest that. And I want, before I go to the after a riot, I got one more thing I want to mention too. When we have a national story that kind of gets the attention of the public, the attention that we need to remind the public that, in this case, Delaware, it's not just Delaware. You know, we had one in Massachusetts, a few in Alabama at the Holman facility. You know, it's not just isolated to that one facility. It's traveling out. So there's always a good chance to, at this point, when the attention goes to Delaware, what we need to do as a family is remind people, hey guys, while you're looking at Delaware, yes, let's be there for our brothers and sisters, but guys, this is also going on in Florida. This is also going on in Alabama. You know what I mean? Because we need to fix the system. The system is broken, and you really can't fix it in an isolated manner. You have to remind people that, hey, it's everywhere. Because that's how far back corrections is right now. That's the scary thing. Okay, that's scary right now because we're hurting right now. We're bleeding because it's brought to that point. We're at a point where we're way past the tipping point. So now we have to do what we can to bring attention to our plight because nobody else is doing it because they're afraid that if they say something, people are going to look at them, well, you're running it. You know, so shame on you. It's not about that. It's not about, you know, you want to save your people, screw vanity. Go out there and say, you know what, I made a bad choice. I thought I could do it. When I got the job, reality kicked in. I need help. Because the thing is, the moment you admit help, help will come. But the moment you try to hide it, help will never come because the public has no way to look in. So they're looking at you, the appointed person, for an honest perspective of what's going on. And if you don't give them that honest perspective, you're not going to get the help you need. So it's okay to be vulnerable because I think the front line will also give you a lot more respect because the front lines will be like, hey, listen, this guy's watching out for us. This guy's telling the public, this is hard to do. We need help. And that's good. That's what's needed. Those are the people that we need in those positions. When the front line says we have a concern, do we wait for a riot to break out and then address the concern? No. We try to do it and be preventive. That's why you have the people on the front line. They're your eyes and ears, and they're going to tell you things that's going to help you prevent situations like riots, situations like staff assaults, you know, situations like contraband coming in. But if you ignore them, you're not doing the preventive measures that needs to be done because it's the front line that's going to feed you. It's going to give you the intel that you need to do what needs to be done. That's why I keep my open door policy. You know, you can't shut the door on the front line because they're your eyes and ears. You can't walk a facility once a week and think once a week for maybe an hour and think you know more than the people that work at 8 hours a day and in some cases 7 days a week. It's not going to happen. So you have to be open to what's coming in and you have to take it seriously. You have to take it seriously because if you don't take it seriously, you're going to get somebody hurt. You know, and again, I'm kind of going off topic, but I promise you I'll go right back. There's another article I have about the push for corrections to be seen as law enforcement because we have the laws that are being passed that we don't know if they're protecting us. We don't know because in some states corrections isn't seen as law enforcement. You know, it's funny. Pennsylvania, right? A guy comes to New Jersey with a weapon that was Pennsylvania Department of Corrections a while back, and he gets arrested in New Jersey because New Jersey, or the way Pennsylvania labels corrections in Pennsylvania, is not the way they're labeled in Jersey. They're seen differently. So we need to keep that consistent recognition. The fact that on a national level, yes, corrections is law enforcement. You know, and we got to fight for that. And there's a lot of reasons why we have to fight for that. But most importantly, it's because we need to keep ourselves consistent. And if we fight for that law enforcement recognition, we're going to get the LEOSA training that we need, the law enforcement training. You know what I mean? That some states have, like Jersey, New York, California. That's the training that puts these officers at this level. You know what I mean? And it really does. It makes the facility run a little bit tighter. You know, but also it's good for management too, because if management provides the training, then they can hold the front line responsible if they mess up. But you can't hold them liable if you're not giving them the proper training. You can't yell at an officer for not knowing how to maintain a crime scene if he's never been trained on how to do so. You know, you can't have an academy that's 2 or 3 weeks and think that's enough to go ahead and say set them in the facility. It's not enough. 2 and 3 weeks, you don't even give them a chance to develop a bond between their brothers and sisters that they're going to risk their lives over. You know, a 15, 16-week academy, there's a good chance that these officers can build a bond. And then they could take that with them behind the wall. But in 2 or 3 weeks, they can't build that bond. I'm going to risk my life for a stranger? I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to risk my life for a stranger, but you give me 15 or 16 weeks of an intense academy where we have to really rely on each other because the instructors are getting on us and, you know, we build that solidarity. Well, shit, that may be better. That made me bring me closer here where this isn't a stranger. This guy helped me through the academy. This guy was there for me when I didn't think I could make it. You know, you're giving this officer a chance to build a bond with his brothers and sisters, which will hopefully carry him or her through his career. So if there's a chance an inmate tries to manipulate them, hey, you're not going to let me turn my back on my family. You know, and that's what you need them to do. You're bringing a bunch of strangers together that have to find themselves at the end to be one big family. It doesn't happen in 2 to 3 weeks. It just doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. It needs to be intense. They need to be able to support each other, you know, and it's something that literally we're inconsistent with on a national level. So we need to push that form of training so we can get that recognition. But again, I digress. Let's just go back to what the original topic was, which was after riot. Okay, so we talked about locking the facility down, checking out that you exhaust the investigation, go every route, and that takes time. So if you listen to me from the public, stop calling the facility. Stop it. Because you're going to be the same person that's going to call the facility when they lift the lockdown too early because you're pressuring them and another inmate dies or another riot takes off. You're going to be the same person calling saying, what were you thinking? Because that's what the public does. Public gets wishy-washy. Let the department do what it's got to do to eliminate the threat and find justice. That's the key. And that cannot be done quickly. That has to be done in very controlled, and it takes time. But remember, we're locking down because we had to react to a threat. We didn't lock down because we chose to do it just to be assholes. We locked down because we had to lock it down. We had to lock it down to make it safe for inmates and staff. And I'm saying inmates first because I'm talking to the public. Okay? I'm saying inmates first because that's what the public want. Well, there it is. You want us to lift that lockdown? Then you're putting your family at risk, not us. So quit it. Stop asking. Okay, please. Because what you got to start doing, guys, and this is to the public, is hold the right people responsible. We talked about the visits in New Hampshire, right? And they're putting the restrictions on the visits. And they're saying, well, the visitors are being punished. Why is the DOC doing that? They're doing it because they're reacting, because they have to do it. The person responsible for those visitors getting punished are the people that take advantage of the privileges by using that time to bring in contraband. So why is the facility at fault? They're not at fault. They're doing what needs to be done because people abused the privilege. That's the key. Okay, so another effort that we want to do here with the riot, and I think this is a great idea, is obviously the people that have influence. We need to, I think when you deal with gangs, especially the ones that have an influence, I would like to see them rotated in different facilities throughout the state every 3 months, if possible. I know we can't isolate them, unfortunately, because that was a big thing in California, by the way, because of the political pressure on that. But having said that, rotate them. Don't give them a chance to get their feet wet. Keep them up and running, because the problem is the people that have influence and they have the ability to unite inmates, that's a serious threat to the well-being and integrity of the institution, because it's a threat to the people that keep the institution safe. It's a threat to anything that we need to do to keep the institution safe. Okay? You're looking at one officer most of the time that's got to manage a dorm of 120 inmates, maybe even more so. You know, I'm giving 120 as the lighter side of things. That's an open door. Now imagine, you know, it's hard, yes, to move or control inmates in an isolated fashion, right? Like, you know, 1 or 2 inmates here, 2 or 3 inmates here, whatever it is. It's a lot harder to control inmates that are all together and connected. Imagine that officer that has to have that has a unit, right, full of the same gang, the same set. Because you let's say, you know, safety wise, right? I don't know how some facilities, but a lot of those facilities may house the same gang members together because it keeps the peace, sort of. Not for the officer, it doesn't. For the officer, it's harder now because he's got inmates that are already united. So now he has to be very careful. She has to be very careful of how they give out their orders because you have a united front. So what I just say to Bob doesn't just affect Bob. It affects Jim. It affects Bill. It goes on down the line where if the inmates aren't united, my problem with Bob is just literally it. My problem with Bob. And most likely everybody has a problem with Bob. But if you give the inmates a chance to unite, then it's not just Bob's problem. It's Bill's problem. It's Jim's problem. It's everybody's problem, which brings me to the next thing is the basic needs of inmates. Okay, guys, not being an inmate lover, because I treat everybody fairly. Okay, I'm very objective in what I do because of my level on the administrative side, but I am pro front line. I'm pro front line if they're right. Trust me. Having said that, inmates have a right to their needs. Okay, you cannot deny them the needs. I'm going to tell you why, and just hear me out. And we have a very professional audience, so you know I'm sure you can understand where this comes from. You know, after Attica, they invented this grievance system. And what happened was when Attica rioted, they felt that their needs for simple things in life, like the toilet paper and maybe educational programs or whatnot, were not being met. And they thought that they've exhausted every option and they weren't being heard. Now, I'm not justifying what they did. Don't think I'm justifying that because I'm not. But hear me out. I'm not trying to minimize or negate the riot, but just hear me out. Okay, when they felt that those needs were exhausted and everything was falling on deaf ears, they then take matters into their own hands. Okay, and that's a problem for us because now we're giving the inmates an ability to unite over simple necessities, which if you don't give Bob a piece of toilet paper because he deserves it, well, guess who else is not getting toilet paper? Jim. So now Jim and Bob are connected. We don't want that. We want Bob's issues to be Bob's issues. We want Jim's issues to be Jim's issues, right? So as we move forward, again, not to negate or minimize what happens here, just a little effort in learning and stepping forward, you have this grievance system, which, don't get me wrong, inmates will take advantage of. We know that, okay? We know that. But outside of that, just hear me out. We have to make sure that we attend to those grievances that are legit. And unfortunately, we have to go through a lot of bullshit to get to those legit ones because you have inmates that take advantage of it and it pisses you off. Trust me, it pisses you off. But unfortunately, there are legit ones in there that we have to address. Now, a little perspective from management, and again, pro front line, but just hear me out. If we start getting complaints, let's say you have an officer, okay, who everywhere he works, he gets complaints or she gets complaints. Everywhere they work, no matter where you put them. At one point, maybe the first complaint you address, you know, see what it is. Maybe you listen to, takes the officer word, you know, hey, what's going on? Okay, I understand. I'll take care of it, blah, blah, blah. And as a supervisor, you go, you talk to the inmate. Nothing big. First time the officer ever gets a complaint, you handle it, you know, whatever the complaint is. But then the officer goes to another area and he gets another complaint. This time, the inmates aren't connected. They don't know each other. Happen to be on two different sides of the facility. And, you know, you look at the complaint a little bit differently now. They're going, well, I wonder what's going on. This is the same complaint we had with another inmate. He dealt with another unit when he was there. So now you address a little more. But now you get another complaint in another area. Then officers got to be addressed. Okay, especially if it's dealing with the inmates. Don't get me wrong. You're going to have inmates that don't like strict officers. We understand that. But believe it or not, guys, when you have officers that are strict, there are going to be some inmates that are like, hey, we like him. Because when he's here, we know that there's no shit going on. When she's here, we know nobody's messing around. The ones that don't like the officer are the ones that don't like the strict officer, are the ones that are doing foolish things. But I'm going to tell you something, guys, in my line of work. When you have officers that are strict and are doing the right thing, you're going to have inmates that may not want that person in. You know, we know that because they're doing stupid shit. But you will have other inmates that will come up and say that officer's good. Keep them there. He's keeping this place in check so those little foolish young kids can't mess around. But then you get some, because you do have to listen to the population sometimes. Hey, listen, this guy here, he's not giving us toilet paper. He's not letting us out for programming, which we're supposed to get. You know, and the problem is why you have to entertain that as management is because they're going to try to go to the supervisor first. Because even if it gets to management, management's going to defer it back to the immediate frontline supervisor, which is the sergeant. The sergeant should look into that and make a proper effort to look into that. Because if that sergeant doesn't make an effort to look into it, it's going to go to another level up. And then another level up. So look how many levels it's going to go up. It's going to go up a few levels. Now if it gets to the administration level, this is where it gets dangerous. And the administration doesn't choose to listen to it. But when you're going on the compound, you can see that these inmates are united in this, and the administration takes no effort to look at it. There's a good chance that we're going to lose control of that facility. Now, I'm not saying that management's going to cave in, because if the officer's right, they're right. And we know that, and we'll stick by that officer. That's what we should be doing. Don't get me wrong. But if there is a problem, management has to address it. So when we're talking about concerns that lead to riots, most of the time when the inmates riot, they riot over needs that they're supposed to have. And I'm using the word needs. We know what those are. They're reading that handbook. They know what they're supposed to have. And trust me, sometimes it pisses you off because they play games and you don't want to give, but those are their needs. It's not their privileges or their wants. And we have to remember the difference. We have to remember the differences between their needs and their privileges. Okay? You really shouldn't mess with their needs, because that's going to come back at you tenfold. But again, having said that, just words of advice here, is as management, most of the time, when a riot occurs, most of the time, the issue usually deals with simple necessities that are being ignored. They're not rioting to break out. They're rioting to get these needs met. Again, not to minimize or negate what they've done, because the rioting is bullshit. It's bullshit. Don't get me wrong. But I'm just giving you an education here as to why they do it. Having said that, they've done it because they feel that they've exhausted every alternative. Okay? But again, it's not right. It's wrong. But still, I'm just trying to inform. That's what happened in Attica, so they invented the grievance system. Okay? So please, just for safety reasons, if you get concerns and you're in a supervisory position, look into them. Especially if it deals with the needs of the facility. Don't let it get to a point where it's too late to control. Plus, think about it. You're saving that officer. And let me tell you something. In my experience, the officers that rile up the inmates, when shit hits the fan, they're not going to be there. It's going to be you, who's done your job every day. And when that plan sets in motion and you open up that cage to let that inmate out for whatever movement it is, the inmate's going to tell you, I'm sorry, man, it wasn't supposed to be you, but plan's already in motion. You know, how unfair is that? Now you can't go home because somebody wants to be an asshole. You know what I mean? So, again, the advice I give is for you. It's the culture we're in. It's just a culture we're in. So, again, make sure we attend to whatever grievances as supervisors that need to attend to. You know what I mean? Make sure we're able to do our best through our experience and knowledge to weed out the ones that are crap. And trust me, we'll figure it out and find some way to hold those inmates responsible for that crap that they're putting through. But in the meantime, get the ones that are serious. Don't let it get to a point where we can't handle it no more. But again, guys, I'm not using that as, I'm going back to the Attica riots. I'm not talking about anything recent here. Just hear me out. The Delaware issue, in my opinion, is about a bunch of sore losers on the outside that are pushing whatever it is on the outside, and it's trickling its way behind the wall. People don't realize that stuff on the outside will find its way behind the wall. These inmates are not isolated from the real world like the public thinks. The inmates are very well informed about what goes on in the real world. So when they see these protests and they see these people just fighting for whatever it is, it now starts to make them think, well, we need to do this. We need to organize because it's justified, guys. We need to do this. We need to unite. We need to move forward. So the stuff on the outside is now making its way on the inside. But in this case here, there's only one person managing that unit. There's only one person trying to make sure that things run smoothly. That protest on the outside, that people are saying it's okay to do that? Do you know that those protests that you're thinking is okay to do are now trickling its way on the inside? Because think about it. Some of the complaints that these inmates made, some were needs, sure, whatever. But also some were protesting Trump. Because somewhere along the line, the outside public says it's okay to do that. Are you going to say it's okay now after seeing this? After seeing what happened when shit like that trickles into an environment like the facility? Like a correctional facility? That's why definitely right now with the political turmoil, the extremes, there's no effort to compromise. It's just extremes on one end. Leave those conversations out of the prison setting. Don't get yourself caught in any of those conversations. Don't get too personal. Don't do any of that shit. Because it's not going to get anything. Trust me, it's going to make matters worse. So in the meantime, if you're in the public, look at what you're doing on the outside. I know obviously you forget that corrections exist. You forget that, there's stuff happening behind those fortresses that are in some of your neighborhoods. Know for a fact that these inmates are not isolated from the public. They see things that are going on. And if you keep on doing these things on the outside and justifying that, it's going to trickle its way on the inside. And for you assholes that support protests about that mass incarceration and the slave labor and all this other stuff, look what you're doing to the one officer who's just coming into work, hoping to do their job and go home. Look what type of atmosphere you're creating for that individual. It's hard enough for them to control what they need to do. It's hard enough for them to control what they have to control. You're making it harder when you give the inmates that ability to unite as one entity. That's our biggest fear. We can handle isolated incidents. We can handle those. What we have trouble handling is when they all unite and come together at us as one. That's a problem. Management. Listen to your front line. They have concerns. Remember, guys, the front line has their eyes and ears on the ground. They're hearing things. They're talking to their snitches. If they have manpower, which they should, they can do preventive measures like searches and proper investigations. That's why they're law enforcement, right? Because they can investigate. They're doing what they need to do to make sure that whatever needs to be handled's handled. Well, they're doing that in the hopes that when they find out information, you listen. You at least give them the respect and you listen to what they have to say. They're on the front line. They're risking their lives every day. They hear things that you don't hear. They see things that you don't see. They're making searches. Please give them the manpower to do that. Please give them the manpower to do that because that's a preventive measure that will save lives. Give them equipment too, because that intimidates. That intimidates. Officers that have OC, batons on the ready, they don't look to be as vulnerable. But if you give them nothing and they're understaffed, you're making them vulnerable and the inmates will see that as a weakness. Get your facility properly staffed. Give them what they need. But listen to them when they come at you and say, hey, listen, this is what we're hearing. This is what we're being told. At least listen to them. Because they're going to be exhausted. Right now in Delaware, that's what they should be doing. Keeping their ears to the ground. That's what they need to be doing. Right? And you got to, as I said, have them properly equipped. You got to realize something, guys. We have to have a united front. We have to be seen as something. We have to be seen as being strong. That's why you want to have good employee morale. You don't want to have officers that don't believe in the system. You don't want to have staff members that don't believe in the system because it breaks the system down. You want to have good employee morale. Civilians, talk to custody. Custody, talk to civilians. Let inmates see that. Let inmates see that they cannot divide you. It keeps us stronger. You understand? It's harder to find a weakness when we don't open up a wall for that weakness. There doesn't have to be a weak link in every chain. If custody has a problem, if a civilian has a problem, let them see you go to custody. Don't go to them because they're going to try to do that to divide and conquer. Don't let that happen. Okay? As I said, also make sure your people are properly equipped, facilities properly staffed. If there's something vulnerable, fix it. Fix it. You understand me? That's no joke. These are lives at stake. And in the meantime, I got to go because it's late at night and I got to put my kids to sleep with my wife. I hear a little ruckus downstairs. So I just want to end on one last thing real quick. Lieutenant Floyd. This is my last time pretty much mention him because we're going to have to move on. But I want Delaware to remember something. He is the definition of not just a hero, but about what this profession is about. He's the definition of any person who ever decided that wear the law enforcement uniform for good intent. He is what we strive to be every day. He's the reason why most people can't do this job. Do you understand that? He's the reason why, and I want to say that again, most people can't do this job. This gentleman, this hero, when he was put in a compromised situation, he told everybody, go back. Pretty much, don't worry about me. He saved lives. That is literally what we are about. We devote ourselves to the public for the greater good. We protect the public. We protect each other. And he died doing that. And he is the person that becomes the definition of who we are. And we remind people that anytime they choose to bastardize this profession, this is who it is that you're bastardizing. A hero that risked his lives so we can live. Remember that. Much love to you, Lieutenant Floyd. You were a law enforcement professional who risked your life, and your family in the Delaware DOC, I know for a fact, loves you very much. There's no greater love than when you sacrifice yourself for another. And that's why you'll forever be remembered. That's why you'll forever be recognized. And thank you for defining what we're about. You may be the reason why people start seeing us as law enforcement professionals at a national level. Because you stood your ground and you wore that uniform with honor. And I would have walked a tear with you any day. All right, I love you guys. Stay safe, guys. It's always a pleasure. The show is Tier Talk. Please listen in. And stay safe, guys.